So we have the small donor revolution as a reality, and we have this inversion of the paradigm, really, of, you know, the low cost of communication on the internet, making it possible, really, to move to a mass and more collaborative mode of campaigning. Andrew, did you want to speak to this in terms of the governance paradigm and the challenges there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge believer in using online tools to do offline organizing, right? You get more people together more easily, more quickly, you learn more about it, you capture more data. It's very powerful. What I think is interesting in the context of new technology and offline organizing, though, is back to Twitter, that some of what's powerful about getting together offline and meeting each other face to face and building that kind of relationship, which often leads to giving campaign contributions, and gives you all the sort of experience of being a human being that doesn't come from just reading or listening to somebody on TV. That's actually making its way back to the online world in an interesting way, specifically with Twitter. So Twitter is it's a way to send pithy little updates about what you're doing, moment to moment, and it's this sort of raw, unfiltered, near real time experience of somebody else's life if you're paying attention to somebody's Twitter feed. And that I think certainly doesn't supplant, but it certainly does augment our ability to feel like we know a person in public life, a elected official, a candidate. And some candidates, particularly at local levels actually in New York State, are starting to use that technology to really build closer relationships with constituents in a way that I think is going to build more de facto one-to-one relationships that you might have heretofore had to only get by going to a town hall or knocking on people's doors. And I think that's going to be interesting in terms of, again, who it empowers and enables to be a viable candidate.
Great. Well, I think we can take one question. Do we have a microphone set up, Zach? Great. Thank you, Monica. So this is Monica Yoon, an attorney who actually is a litigator defending public financing in several states as we speak. But she's going to do us the job of running the mic. We can take one question. Yeah, we've got a question here. Yeah. Monica, down in front. Andy is another attorney with the Brennan Center, so we really put our attorneys to work.
Scrubbing floors.
Given that I think there's a feedback loop that we're missing here, and that is that there are consequences to the status quo of big money and the effects in terms of policy and people's lives and the wars and everything else going on. I think that's, to a great extent, that's part of the reason why Barack Obama was so successful in getting all of those small contributors, because he was seen as the antithesis of the status quo. So, and that includes the Republicans and Senator Clinton. Therefore, what I would ask Norm is, to what extent is he going to use his influence on Obama, which I'm sure he has lots of, to use his bully pulpit to educate, to have a series of policy speeches on these topics of money and politics to get the electorate more incensed, so that tsunami, that perfect storm that happened in this election, can happen in 2010 and in 2012. I think you get the question.
I think I get the question, yes. The answer to the question is that the president is a very sophisticated communicator, and is not only going to use the bully pulpit of speeches. And it's very interesting that you point to the bully pulpit, which is a TR, a Teddy Roosevelt formation, because I think the last time we've had a reformer in the Oval Office, in the White House at least, the last time really we've had somebody who, but for his busy schedule, would be in the audience here today and was, an active participant in reform discussions over the past 20 years, made many a trip to Brookings, for example. He was a favorite to talk about these issues there. Was Teddy Roosevelt, who used the bully pulpit. But like Teddy Roosevelt, the president understands that you don't only communicate through your speeches. And he, by the way, has continued to be vocal and really has focused on the role of special interest and the theme of the special interest and the public interest, and has not let up one whit in focusing on lobbyists' role. I mean, that really has been a theme of the first 100 days. But you don't only talk about it, you also address it in your policies, which is why we've had a series of policies, again, really to pick up on this theme, not only the executive order, which he signed, right after swearing us all of the senior staff in. CNN was there, and then he signed the executive order on ethics. He followed with the policy on restricting, setting up the restrictions and the rules for stimulus lobbying. And then, so you talk, you act, and then the third part of powerful communications is you inspire a discussion. So there was an article a couple weeks ago in the New York Times that was above the fold that was critical, predominantly critical of some of our, it had some praise in it too, of some of our lobbying rules. But I was fascinated that day because on the far left of the front page of the New York Times, you had a column with that article, and then on the far right, you had another article that had to do with lobbying that was critical of the lobbyists. And if you had any doubt that we had driven the conversation in the public debate, you only had to flip back to page A18, where both articles were continued next to each other, side by side. So that is the third part of effective communication. And I guess the only other thing that I would add to that is the best is yet to come. We're going to continue this fight. We are not going to stop. We are not going to quit, no matter what.
So you heard it here, folks. We can do one more question if there is interest.
Hi, I'm Bob Stern. I'm with the Center for Governmental Studies in Los Angeles and was working on campaign finance with Henry Waxman back in 1971 when he was in the legislature. And I was interested, Tom, in your comments, and particularly I was looking at your report saying that high contribution limits don't have a meaningful impact. And in California, we were thinking of lowering our very high contribution limits to what the federal limits are for legislators. And I gather what you're saying is it's not going to have much of an impact on competition. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, basically, the study clearly shows that only if you lower the contribution limits significantly to about $500 or less, you're going to have the big bang for the buck. If you have high limits, basically like $2,000 or $3,000, basically you maintain the status quo. And that is because incumbents often get, at least in a handful of states, including California, they get monies at about $1,000 or $2,000, and the limit only bites if they actually can obtain less money.
So I'll just note as well, Bob, that this concerns the impact on competition per se in terms of vote ranges between incumbents and challengers. But we don't really know the question that I was posing earlier, which is what lowering of contribution limits encourages a change in political incentives to create energy around recruiting smaller donors as opposed to just large contributors. And so, there may be some benefits that we're not capturing in this study. I would hate to discourage you from your efforts of lowering contribution limits. Well, thank you so much. We will be reconvening in just 5 minutes or so. We'll take a very short break, and then we will have our democracy director at the Brennan Center, Susan Liss, who will introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Lawrence Lessig. Thank you so much.